On this edition of Native Report, we walk with participants of the Dakota Commemorative March. We visit a school district with a 100% graduation rate for Native American students. And we celebrate our 10th anniversary of Native Report by revisiting Devil's Tower in Wyoming. We also learn something new about Indian country and hear from our elders on this Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Medwakanton Sioux community and the Blandon Foundation.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. The Dakota Commemorative March retraces the footsteps of 1,700 Dakota women, children, and elders who were forced to march 150 miles to Fort Snelling at the end of the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. It's been called Minnesota's Trail of Tears, and for participants, they walk to remember.
It is a sunny but cold November morning as participants in the Dakota Commemorative March gather for the last leg of their journey. When they reach their destination, they will have walked 150 miles over 7 days. Yesterday, the marchers finished that day's walk at Shakopee.
I've been walking with the march since 2004. There's a specific route that we follow in commemoration of that 150-mile march through these townships out of Lower Sioux through New to Henderson, Belle Plaine, Jordan, and today to Shakopee. And tomorrow will be our last day, the closing procession, which will enter down in Fort Snelling. And that will be the last day of the march. I am walking in remembrance of my great-great-grandmother, Ziziwi, who was 9 years old on this forced march.
This year, we've had a few that have walked pretty much every day or every mile that are regulars, and every year we have that where there'll be the number that they want to walk every mile or every mile they can. As far as numbers, we've had a few dozen coming in and out total. A lot of people will join us either at beginning or a little bit from the middle, and then we'll have more people. When we get to the urban areas, we get more just because of population. So there's about a dozen regulars and then other ones that come in and out. For someone that has no idea about what happened, I would give them the brief history and say that we're just doing a commemoration of our ancestors, a way to remember them. If it's someone that I know has a little bit more understanding of our history and our culture and things like that, I would say that it's a way for us to heal. And that's what it was for me originally, and that's why I took over and helped with organizing to keep it going, because it is a way to rebuild a lot of relationships and even family members that are distant relatives that I kind of knew a little bit, but spending time with them on the march, those 7 days, it really rebuilds, I should say, those family connections and those that I guess would be Tioshpaye.
After the U.S.-Dakota conflict of 1862, 303 men were arrested, and of those, 38 were executed in the largest mass execution in United States history. An indiscriminate sweep of Dakota communities removed some 1,700 women, elders, and children who were forced marched to Pike Island, part of Fort Snelling.
What these people have just done is reenacted this march back in November 7th through the 13th, 1862, when 1,700 of our people, primarily women and children, were force marched 150 miles from southwestern Minnesota around the Morton, Redwood Falls area 150 miles to the concentration camp. And again, soldiers enforced this. And so today, these young people and were reenacting that, and most of them had relatives in that march. And I had about 7 or 8 grandmothers in the march, and one of them was bayoneted in the stomach by a soldier on horseback, and her sin was not understanding the English language. You know, white people think, oh, that was 152 years ago. Yeah, that's true, 150 years, but it's like yesterday.
Maza Didi was our grandfather's, great-grandfather's, my great-grandfather's name, and Pajayaween was his wife. Then we started doing some research on the great-grandmother, Pajayaween. And that's when we started to find out more details about this, what we call the Trail of Tears for our tribe. And the more we found out about it, the more heartbreaking it was, and the more we realized that if it wasn't for her and her perseverance, we wouldn't be here at all. And we just don't know how they made it. We don't know how they did it, but we're grateful. So we're all coming together and we're walking.
Marchers carried branches adorned with ribbons that had names of known people on that march back in 1862, and these stakes were planted every mile to honor their relatives. This march is a physical endeavor, but it is also a deeply emotional experience.
All of the families that are represented came from these strong women that endured that march. It's mind-boggling every time I think of it, and when we go out, you know, if it's raining and cold, we can put a rain scarf on or something on, or I have no idea what they wore or what they had, how they managed.
The young people who are running it, they were very thoughtful, and they knew that one of my relatives was Hazawee. Her name, and that means in English, blueberry woman. And they gave me that branch with a name, with a ribbon on it to carry. And then in the circle, we were to put it down. And anyway, when I put it down, it said, Kunshi, Hazawee, Wopi Tanka. Tears came to my eyes. I said, you know, Hazawee, blueberry woman, thank you so much for what you have done.
The first time that I walked across the bridge and down to the lower area where they say that our ancestors were imprisoned, there seems to be nothing but silence as we walk through there. And when we go down, and for me, tears came knowing that my ancestor and all my Dakota relatives' ancestors were imprisoned down there, and that was very sad for me. And at the same time, it was healing for me, because through honoring and remembrance, you know, takes away from that historical grief.
Did you know over 20 Indian tribes have a cultural affiliation with Devil's Tower? Many tribes have stories about how the tower was created. Most of the stories talk about a bear using its claws to score the tower's sides. For example, among other names, the Lakota called Devil's Tower Bear Lodge. A legend tells of a Lakota band camped in the forest at the foot of Bear Lodge. They were attacked by a band of Crow Indians. But with the supernatural assistance of a huge bear, the Lakota were able to defeat the Crow. At Devil's Tower, they fasted, prayed, left offerings, and worshiped the great mystery, which is the essence of the Lakota spiritual and religious life. Even today, at this sacred place, the Lakota pray for health, welfare, and personal direction.
According to a Minnesota Public Radio analysis of the most recent federal data on state graduation rates, the on-time graduation rate of Native American high school students in Minnesota was 49%. However, the Osseo School District has a 100% graduation rate.
When they aren't in class teaching, Ramona Kiddo Stately and Ethan Nerdles can be found in their shared office, oftentimes developing and refining lesson plans. Osseo School District has 25 schools, K through 12.
We serve anywhere from 250 to 300 Native students. The breakdown of our students, we represent all nations. 90%, I would say, of our student population is the Ojibwe Nation, and then we would probably have about 5 or 6% Dakota. And then we also have communities that are Seminole, that are Ho-Chunk, that are Cherokee, Chickasaw. So we probably have about 25 or 30 nations represented within our district. Indian education is really unique in that there is an equal voice between the district, the teacher, that would be Ethan and I, and the parents. So there has to be a parent committee. We have to meet once a month. They tell us what they'd like to see, what their needs are, and we try to respond. And we always respond. We try to respond really quickly and timely and maintain flexibility. The Osseo School District has graduated 100% of their Native students for 9 consecutive years, and we're really proud of that. And one of the reasons for that is that we're allowed here in Osseo to have an Indian education program run the way it was meant to run. Our ideas and our premise is that if we build a strong cultural foundation for a student, I call it wamaji, and that's like I stand strong in my own power. If we can create that in a child at an early age, when stressors are introduced, be it academic or social, a child is going to respond in a more positive way because they know who they are.
That cultural reinforcement begins as soon as the child enters the school system, say in kindergarten, and continues for as long as the student is in the district.
In K through 6 Indian education, it's a lot of experiential learning, a lot of hands-on activities. We don't hand out homework or paperwork. The learning that we do, because it's experiential learning, you can't give out homework assignments. It's in-class reflection or family reflection. And we also have weekend mentorships where we bring in community members that will teach about specific things such as hand games, moccasin games, language immersion. We try to incorporate everything from our lifeways into these family programming events on the weekends. I find it most rewarding when I'm out in the community and my students are excited to see me. I might see them at a powwow or a community gathering like a feast, and they'll remember something from class that might have seemed insignificant to me, but it was a big detail to them, and you can tell that it shaped the way they're looking at the world. If they're bringing it with them out into the community, they see our Indian Ed class as more than just a class. They see it as a place they fit as a relative, because in our Dakota worldview, we're all related. We don't have words for random people. Everyone is our cousin, even if they're not related by blood. And so when you instill that relatedness in children, they take that everywhere. They don't separate themselves out, and when they see each other as relatives, it's just we don't have to teach about respect. It's natural. When someone's your relative, you're not going to disrespect them. And so just seeing these values carried outside of the class is the best part about my job.
There are societal pressures and cultural challenges still faced by Native American students within the district. However, Ramona and Ethan are confident the students can overcome these.
I'm sure that the challenges that were invisible My son was asked when he was in the 3rd or 4th grade, "Why do you have long hair?" And he said, "Because I'm Native." And they said, "There's no more Indians left." And I think that's really a common thought. It really is surprising how little people know about history, how stereotyped it is, but how little people in Minnesota know about the history of this beautiful place they live in.
Here in Minnesota, we only have 5 fluent Dakota speakers left, raised in Minnesota Dakota communities, with about 30 from outside the state that have moved here. And that's really alarming as a Dakota person, that there's so few speakers. This past June, the Dakota Language Society, which I'm a part of, we self-published our first K-12 curriculum, which is being piloted here in Osseo. It's called Dakota Ia Wohadaka Po, Speak Dakota. And it's a 1 through 12 book series. We've just initially published level 1, but each book corresponds to a grade level. What's really unique about it is it uses total physical response teaching. And what that is muscle memory, essentially. So the students are acting out the actions in the classroom while they're learning the language. For example, if they're learning about eating, they're acting out eating while they're learning. And so I liken it to a track runner. They get down in their stance, and when they hear the gun, they take off. So it's the same type of muscle memory and language learning. And with kids, they can pick up the language so much faster than adults. That's what we're working towards here in Osseo, to also bring back the Dakota and Ojibwe language to the families.
The very favorite part of my job is the relationships I build with those students, and now in my 10th year, seeing that they've grown and what they're doing in their own lives, and seeing that I had something to do with that. It's a blessing.
At the beginning of the season, the Haudenosaunee, or the Longhouse people, they would always acknowledge the food and the seeds. They have a seed ceremony. Everybody brings seeds to the ceremony, and then the men play against the women, and then they sing these songs. Whoever wins the Peachstone game, they have to plant the garden. And then the men, then they sing these songs and they dance together to close it, to bring each other together. Then when we start our garden, June Hakeway usually comes around and they plow out the garden for us, because that's a big field. And so then once that's plowed up, then one of the speakers comes over and he'll burn tobacco, and the kids will all make a big circle, and they'll yell to wake up the Creator, to tell him they're giving thanks for all the food that he's given us and the seeds. And then they do a song, a seed song, and then they run all the way around the whole garden, and they sing the song, and so and give thanks.
In celebration of our 10th season, we revisit a very special place considered sacred by many, the Devil's Tower.
According to the Kiowa, the story of Bear Lodge begins with 7 little girls who were out gathering food when they were attacked by a mighty grizzly bear. The bear was about to catch them when the girls got on top of a low rock. They prayed that the rock would grow tall and save them from the bear. The rock did grow right up into the sky. To this day, you could still see the claw marks that the frustrated bear left on the sides of the rock. And the girls? There are 7 bright stars in heaven, watching over us still. Legends, stories, and sacred traditions surround Bear's Lodge in the cultures of at least 23 different tribes. White settlers dubbed it Devil's Tower. On September 24, 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt made Devil's Tower a national monument. Today, for the first time in history, this national monument has an American Indian superintendent.
I came up here and I had left South Dakota when I was 16. I'm a member of the Rosewood Sioux tribe, and I had left when I was 16 years old and had never really thought about coming back to the area. However, when I came back and started working on the Black Hills National Forest, I saw that there had been a real change in the way that Indian people were perceived, and that there was a lot more people that were starting to understand, the significance of sacred sites and what tribal people were trying to protect.
When the position at Devil's Tower became available, Dorothy Firecloud brought extensive experience as a lawyer, negotiator, and tribal relations specialist to a challenging position.
As the superintendent, what I'm responsible for is I'm the primary caretaker of the park, and based on that I have 9 full-time employees that work for me year-round, and then during the summer we have maybe an additional 30 to 40 seasonal employees that come and do projects to ensure that the park is run properly.
Sharing this responsibility is the park's chief ranger, who for the first time is also an American Indian.
I myself, as being a Native American and enrolled Blackfeet tribal member, I feel I have a unique idea and understanding, and having the opportunity to share my knowledge with other managers, I think we can better manage an area with more information and more knowledge.
Many people come to Devil's Tower to enjoy its natural beauty. Some come for the thrilling adventure of climbing the tower, but many others come for their own spiritual observations. Helping the different park patrons to feel welcome, be safe, and be respectful of one another presents an ongoing challenge.
One of the things that we're trying to do is develop a video which will help to explain the climbing activities in the park and the sacredness of the park, and it will help folks to better understand what's going on here.
One of the things I was really surprised when I first got here was to hear that the climbers and the Native American tribes had never met face to face to sit down and really talk about what it was that was of primary concern to each of them. And so that's one of the things that we're going to focus on, is getting those two groups together to talk and hopefully to find common, ways of looking at preserving the tower. Because I think the one thing that I've discovered being here is that everybody's, we're all starting at the same place. Everybody wants to protect the tower. Everybody wants to see, that it's here for future generations to enjoy.
For this future, Superintendent Firecloud wants to make certain there's a whole new generation of American Indian National Park Service employees rising through the ranks.
I think if we get them when they're young enough and get them interested in that and getting them to come visit the parks, the park here, other parks, that will be able to grab their attention when they're young and keep it going. And then in the future, then both Donna and I can have, younger kids, younger Native American students to replace us.
The management team is committed to making certain that the voices of the affiliated tribes are heard and their wishes are understood.
Right now we have 23 identified affiliated tribes, and one of the things that we have ongoing right now is an ethnographic study that's looking at all the tribes and going more into the history to see if other tribes, have affiliations, if other tribes have stories that have connections to the tower. And this past year what they did was they just went through all the history books and did that part of the study. This coming year, what that group is going to do is actually go out and start picking up some of the oral stories and talking to elders in each one of the affiliated tribes to get more of that involved and to see, to get a greater comprehensive view of the tribal activities around the tower.
As Dorothy and I have talked to several folks in the area, they've commented on how welcome they feel coming into the park here, which is something that Dorothy has, spent a lot of time and effort trying to make all the employees understand that, we're here for everybody, especially if folks want to come here and practice part of their culture. We want to have them come here. We want them to feel welcome to come here.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, find us at nativereport.org, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you for spending time with us here on Native Report. I'm Stacy Thunder. We'll see you again.
Stacy Thunder is Ojibwe from the Red Lake and Lakota Ray Nations and is the Legislative Counsel for the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. Professor Tad Johnson is the Director of the Master of Tribal Administration and Governance program at the University of Minnesota Duluth and is an enrolled member of the Bois Forte Band of Chippewa. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Medwakanton Sioux community and the Blandin Foundation. Closed captioning is provided by the Grand Portage Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa.